Is this it? Who's coming today?
Okay. Good evening, and welcome to the July 20th, 2016 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. Tonight we'll be reviewing minutes from the prior June 22nd meeting. We have a public hearing for 84 Cleveland Street at 7:30, and at 7:15 we will be deliberating on 14 Cottage Street and voting on the variance request. If the members would like to take a few minutes to look at the June 22nd meetings. Please also note that this hearing is being video and audio recorded for Mass General Law. We did not.
Make a motion that we accept the July 22nd meeting minutes.
Second the motion?
Discussion?
All in favor?
Betsy, I have a few, I've marked my copy up in pink, just some administrative corrections, basically just second paragraph. She just says, Mr. Weeder read the public notice into record. She had also said in the first sentence, so I'll give you that.
Yep, and I did notice that her foot or two had the wrong.
Correct. So just anything I've done in pink.
Yep.
Also noticed in the finding of facts for Bristol Pond, she notes that the owners of 14 have provided mitigation to owners of 13. It's actually the opposite way around. It's the owners of 13 provided mitigation to 14.
Okay,
So I'll give you that as well.
great, thank you.
Do I have to make a
That
mo-
was public information?
That was, yes. They mentioned that they had,
They did.
yes.
So I have to make a motion that we accept the mini minutes with your corrections as amended.
Yes. Do we hear a second?
So second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nice catch, Chris.
That's it, I'll give you that copy. Just the items in pink. We have about 5 minutes before we can start to deliberate on the 14 Cottage Ave. So at this moment, we'll take a break for about 5 minutes here, and then we'll deliberate at 7:15. 14 Cottage Ave. Okay. Okay, we are back in session, and we are going to deliberate and vote with regard to 14 Cottage Ave request for a variance. So first, we have to put together our finding of facts. We'll use this one, actually.
Use that instead?
I'm actually, Betsy, I'm going to sign and give you the June 1 plan for 14 Cottage Ave, which was the latest version we received. So I'll sign that, and make sure you can enter that into record.
When did that one come in?
We reviewed this one last time.
This is
I don't
what
think we
the
put it
house
into
has
the
moved,
record.
the house has moved forward.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right. I just have March 11th on my plan.
Yeah, it was a June 1 we received at the last meeting.
Okay.
So I'm going to make sure we put that into record. It is June 1st, 2016. And we'll put that have that into the record as well.
Just look at one thing.
Whatever you want, Don.
Okay, finding of facts. We know we have a 1.5-story home, plus a cottage, plus a garage, which are all gonna be raised.
All three structures, right? That's the three structures on the property.
Hmm?
3 structures on the property.
Correct.
Right.
And all 3 will be raised.
Mhm.
We have that the new property, the new home is going to be 25 feet off the front. The lot is 29,000 square feet, a non-conforming lot in the R2 zoning district. The side and rear setbacks of the property will meet current zoning laws. They're actually improving from 7 to 63 and from 9 to 33 side and rear setbacks.
Yep.
The property will receive a new septic system. The home will be 1,800 square feet with a garage.
Does that include the garage, Chris, or is
Yes,
that?
including the garage. The retention wall at the rear of the property will be rebuilt and is approximately 80 feet. There will be a rip-wrap swale installed at the rear of the property, approximately 95 feet. Cape Cod berm will be installed, as well as 2 catch basins to mitigate any erosion caused by water.
Are those catch basins the underground recharge areas for the roof runoff?
Correct. Another finding of fact is that we know the property from the front to the back drops from 198 feet to 173 feet, and then drops again another 40 feet to the very rear of the property. Anybody have any other?
The building to be raised, finding of fact would be that they plan to use plywood. Or is that a condition?
That'll be a condition.
Condition.
Correct. Yep.
Is it a finding of fact to suggest that the the concerns of the neighbors on the lower lands have been aired and addressed, and that that engineering has determined that the effect of this change to the landscape would not make that situation more detrimental. Then we question whether or not that whole thing could slide down the hill.
I think the finding of fact would be that that there will be landscaping provided and jute matting to further prevent
Okay.
erosion in the lower. That, I think, yeah, that would be a finding of fact. And that there was numerous abutters present at the hearing. And I think we had 3 or 4 different abutters. So yes,
So I
that'd be a
think-
finding of
I
fact.
think everybody had a chance to really ask their questions with respect to that.
Correct. Yeah, I'll put that as a
Situation.
finding of fact,
Okay.
yes. And their concerns were raised.
In addition, we're gonna go there, there were concerns regarding the 1.5-story structure to be raised as it relates to the potential damage to the properties below.
Mm-hmm, okay.
Does it matter at all, again, I don't know if I'm getting off the track here, but does it matter at all to suggest that the applicant is an experienced heavy equipment operator? And, I don't know if
We
that's a...
don't know that. It's not a fact.
It was stated by him, though, so, okay, just to know, because the other thing I'm getting at is that house down at the corner, that one there, where the removal of that house was questions. People like, gee, how the heck, and the gentleman suggested, he said, I'll push a thing right in the hole and dig it and pull it all out. It's just a piece of cake, like there's nothing to him. Didn't know if that might be,
Well, we can state that the applicant is a professional and part of his profession is the raising of properties.
because that was an
Demolition.
issue.
And he just stated at the hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
What appeared to be a risky removal of that house, to the applicant seemed like it was nothing, like he could
Right.
do it, He's just been doing it all the time, no big deal.
I guess my concern I would have there, David, is his findings of fact, because we don't know that. All we do
Okay.
is have the word of that. he's
That
done this
individual.
before.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Okay.
I guess under a condition of approval, it should be that the person who tears down the building has experience in raising structures.
Mhm.
That's fine. okay.
Or
And then we can
the
say-
fact being that he made the statement, not that he is a professional, but that he made the statement, you know what I mean?
That's a fact, he made
Yeah,
a
I mean,
statement.
You're gonna say, I mean, it'll be in our detailed record, and
You know
it'll be
what I
in
mean?
our,
So I just
it'll be in
know.
our minutes. So, yeah.
I mean, I figure it was discussed enough that I think may warrant some entry into this record. You know?
Yeah,
I think a condition of approval would be that the person who is contracted to tear down the structure has experience in
Right.
demolition.
Yeah.
he'll have to take out a demolition permit, so he will have to,
Yeah.
he'll have to go sit with Bob and show him his licenses to do such, so.
We have to actually, as a condition of approval, say that a demolition permit must be pulled, or is that just,
No, no.
it's kind of like the trees on Boardman, we
Right.
just don't have to say it, just, they do what they want to do?
They have to pull a building permit, and part of that will be a demolition permit. Any other finding of facts?
Trying to remember, I made a note that we had some information about endangered species.
About,
Endangered species, some sort of reference to,
we received a report
right,
from, but there was no further concern
okay,
from them on it.
yeah.
But we can state that we did receive a report from the,
Okay.
from the endangered species, stating that there was no. You want to take a review, a look now at the statutory requirements? Everybody ready?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. The first is the variance must be in respect to a particular land or structure. Obviously, it's 14 Cottage Ave in Norfolk.
Mm-hmm.
3 existing structures to be raised, 1 new single-family house. Second is there must be circumstances related to soil condition, shape, or topography of such land or structures, and especially affecting such land or structure, but not affecting generally the zoning district in which it is located.
Topography was the one we talked about.
I think we've,
Yeah.
the topography of this is we're going from a slope of, I think we said 198 feet at the front to 173, and then another drop of 40 feet.
60-foot
Well,
drop.
also the fact that the house was moved closer to the street,
Right.
you know,
It's
because
actually,
of the
it's a better
topography.
place than where the house is today, and the
Right.
property would not, the topography would not allow it to be placed in a different position further back.
And all three structures are, existing structures are non-conforming.
That's right, so, okay. Little enforcement of the provisions of the bylaw would involve substantial hardship, financial or otherwise, to the petitioner or applicant. Again, if we didn't allow them to move it forward, we would have to see retention walls being built at that back end, substantial tree removal probably,
More
in order
trees,
to
yeah.
build the structure, so it's actually going to, it would certainly cause a financial hardship if we
I
required
assume it would
that.
make
And
sense.
and again, we're getting a better product.
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense to rebuild the house that's there today.
That's right.
Right.
And
That
I would
wouldn't
be
meet the
more,
set-
I would
wouldn't
be
meet the
more
setbacks.
concerned,
It would meet the setbacks anyway.
and I would be more concerned with the actual runoff concerns if
Mm.
we required it to sit back and build a retention wall.
Mhm.
And then fourth, desirable relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without nullifying or substantially derogating from the intent or purpose of such bylaws. Obviously, being close to the street, as we said, is going to be a
Improvement.
betterment for everybody. Removing that
That
house
structure
in the
that's,
corner is, everyone at the hearing
Mhm.
stated that it was, they wanted to see it taken down
Yep.
absolutely.
and rebuilt.
Better
So-
product.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion to approve the variance for,
You know, before we do that, actually, we didn't talk about our conditions, so we should actually discuss conditions
Yeah, we
before we
do.
vote, so we can
no,
include
agreed,
those.
agreed.
Okay?
That we should keep,
Yep.
now that you're chairman, we should keep you honest.
You should, okay.
Someone has to take your place.
That's
He
right.
called for a motion.
Okay, conditions.
Yep.
One of which is, when they tear down the 1.5-story wood frame structure that is in the corner, that they adequately provide sheets of plywood, and we talked about, they originally talked about 4x8 sheets of plywood,
Mhm.
and we had said maybe they might want to have a double barrier of plywood to ensure that debris does not come falling off that embankment down the 60 feet.
I agree.
Um,
The barrier, what they show on the plan is 80 feet towards the rear and 30 feet on the left-hand side. So I think a double barrier plywood,
What do you mean by double? What does that mean, double barrier?
in
What
other
does it
words,
mean?
2 sheets of
Oh,
plywood
okay, okay.
mounted in
So
posts.
instead of being 4 feet high, it's 8 feet
8 feet
high.
high to prevent anything from falling down onto, I think it's old Populatic is the
Yeah.
street below.
Old Papalatic
Do
is
we
the
need to be
street.
specific about what they use for that barrier? I mean, just
They
the
did
fact
state
that-
plywood, so.
Okay. I mean, we could reference what they stated and just say that they need to ensure that they prepare a barrier that will prevent the runoff.
I think plywood's good, a good barrier would be good, okay? I think another condition was the plantings. I think the residents were concerned that proper plantings be done, that the jute mat be done. Plants that are indigenous to the area,
Right.
pachysandras and things to prevent the erosion.
Was there any guarantee that certain trees weren't being cut? Was anything being marked in that?
They were all marked.
They were being marked, so trees that were marked will not be taken.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. I think another thing we talked about was that the concerns of people on Old Populatic was that, and I had mentioned putting a bond on it, but we talked about maybe reviewing this in 6 months to make sure that there hasn't been any increased
Mhm.
water flow to the Old Populatic Street. So maybe a review in 6 months by the board to ensure that there isn't any issues.
Who conducts that review?
Hmm?
Who conducts that review?
We would do it. We'd actually have a hearing to review the
How do we have to
conditions.
schedule that right now, or
Hmm?
would we schedule that right now?
We could put a tentative date now, or we could say in 6 months, and then Amy could contact, or Betsy
Yeah.
could contact the
Is
applicant.
6 months potentially too short of a timeframe?
It-
And
it-
the reason being is,
When does the
you know,
work
which is they
start?
start to dig and demolish and then start to build. What we're really looking is a permanent solution, so really wouldn't maybe a year from now be a more appropriate timeframe?
We could do 6 months or a year. We do either or.
I don't know when they plan to start construction, but they have to do something within a certain period of time.
Yeah,
from
I mean,
permit,
a year I don't think would be a problem. I think a year might work fine.
Yeah.
So we'll schedule for 1 year. Any problems? So 1 year.
And that's to determine if we do a bond, or?
No,
is it-
that would be
we'll just
determined if,
determine if there's any issues.
If there were issues, we would do it as an open hearing, correct?
Right.
And if there were any issues of the abutters, okay, in terms of all of a sudden this tremendous water runoff, or, then we could readdress some of the requirements.
Determine what has to be done to
Yeah.
prevent that.
We don't, the baseline for that, though, like, there already is water runoff there, so what's the baseline for that discussion?
Yeah, that's,
So it's more of just getting feedback from the residents and the abutters?
mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Any other conditions? I couldn't think of another condition.
Well, now that you have conditions, you need to make a motion.
Okay. Make a motion that we approve the variance for 14 Cottage Ave, to allow the demolition and reconstruction of an existing non-conforming singles-family structure, which will violate the requirements of sections E1B to a greater extent than the original structure. The property is located at 14 Cottage Ave, Assessors Map 4, Block 15, Lot 15, and is in the R2 zoning district.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Approve, or
Yes to
yes to
grant.
grant, yes to grant, sorry.
Yes to grant?
Yes to grant.
Yeah.
Yes to grant.
See, Mike usually goes left to right.
Thank you very much. You're all set. We'll write this decision, probably have it to the town clerk beginning of next week.
Thank you.
Okay. It is 7:30. We are going to take about a 5-minute recess so that we give people time to come to the hearing for the 84 Cleveland Street, Lakeland Farm Comprehensive Permit. So we will be off air for about 5 minutes here while we bring people in, and then we'll start up again.
How are you?
Okay, we are back on the air. Tonight, we are going to first review the traffic impact analysis. And Attorney Knapik, I guess, would you like to present that?
Actually, I'm going to defer to our technical consultants tonight because it seems to me that the focus of this meeting will be largely technical. So without further ado, I'll let Steve O'Connell make the introduction. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. On behalf of Lakeland Farms LLC, I'm Steve O'Connell from Andrews Survey and Engineering. We retain the services of WSP Parsons Brinkerhoff for the traffic analysis. Here this evening on their behalf and our behalf is Jennifer Conley. I've worked a long time with Jennifer on a variety of traffic projects. Been in the business for doing this for a long time, and I think you'll be pleased with her analysis, and look forward to the discussion. So I'd like to turn it over to Jennifer.
Good evening. Again, my name is Jennifer Conley, and I prepared, the memorandum outlining the traffic impacts of this project. As is typically the case with a residential project, we anticipate the peak hours or the peak periods to occur during the commuting peak times, 7 to 9 in the morning and 4 to 6 in the evening. So those were the time periods that we looked at for this study. We took a look at the traffic not only passing by the site over a 24-hour period, but we also looked at the adjacent intersection of Cleveland Street at Fruit Street, just to get a handle on if there was an impact to another location, if there was an impact, on the road, not just at the site driveway. I'm gonna borrow the corner of your desk here, if that's okay. So we did an automatic traffic recorder, as I said, for a 24-hour period on Cleveland Street. We also did turning movement counts at Cleveland Street and Fruit Street. And if you're following along, after we took a look at what the existing conditions were, and again, that data was collected in May, we took a look at seasonal information to ensure that we were looking at average month conditions or higher than average month conditions, which is kind of standard operating practice based on Mass DOT adjustment factors. We then took a look at what our site-related traffic was anticipated to be, and we used the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual to calculate the trips that are anticipated to be generated by these townhouses. And as you can see, we estimated those at 18 trips in the weekday AM peak hour and 21 trips in the weekday PM peak hour. Then we distributed those. We looked at a few different sources. Because we had existing traffic counts at Cleveland at Fruit, that gave us a good idea of what was currently happening based on the residences in the area, how people were currently commuting during those periods. We also looked at, as a whole, what census data said for the entire town and what commuting patterns and what communities people would be traveling to and from. So we distributed our traffic, and the way that turned out was a 70-30 split. Approximately 70% is anticipated to travel to and from points to the east, and 30% to and from the west. Like I said, it was nice to have those existing counts confirm the data that we ended up finding from the census. We looked at the intersection operations, and because these are lower volume roadways, you will see on page 4 that we had levels of service that were very good. Because there isn't a lot of, when people are stopped at a stop sign, they don't have to wait a significant amount of time to find a gap to pull out. So the levels of service are in the range of A to B, with anywhere from 7 seconds up to 12 seconds average delay. Now, a lot of times people say, well, if I'm waiting to take a left, I wait longer than that, and that is true. Your delay is average. So if you pull up and are taking a right, your delay is likely less than that. And if you pull up and are waiting to take a left, because you have to cross both directions of traffic, your delay can be a little bit longer. But that presents you with an average delay on those approaches. And obviously, of utmost importance was looking at available sight lines to ensure safety at the proposed driveway location. And as you can see on page 5, we took a look at the available sight lines and found not only for the posted speed, but also for the speed that folks are traveling based on our data we collected on Cleveland Street itself and in the vicinity of the site, that we're able to meet those sight lines so that the driveway is in a safe location. Now, I do know Ken Ho is here, and Ken and I have known each other a long time and have certainly reviewed each other's work a number of times, and I know Beta did produce a review document. I don't know if you want me to kind of go over some of that now, or if you'd rather he present his and then come back to me. It's up to you how you'd like to proceed.
Whatever your preference.
Well, why don't I just quickly, there's a few things. One was in regards to the study area that I wanted to speak to because, as I already said, and Beta did review our distribution is about 70% to the east and 30% to the west. Beta's first comment was about expanding the study area. And in some cases, that might make sense. We would disagree with them in this case, especially because our intersections to the west are anticipated to see only 5 trips or less of an impact during that peak hour. And that sort of a level is well within the daily variation. I don't think that's anything that anyone is going to notice a difference of over the course of an entire hour. 5 additional vehicles is something that's imperceptible to the average driver. So we could study them, but I'm very confident your levels of impact are going to be very similar to what you see at the site driveway and at Fruit Street, because the impact at those locations to the west is less than at Fruit Street. Truly, our most intensive spot is at Fruit Street. That's where 70% of our traffic goes. As you know, knowing the area, if you are headed out to Fruit and then south on Seekonk, you would turn down Fruit and take another right. So some of our traffic veers off there, and some of it continues and takes a left up. So really, the most intense spot of impact is at Fruit Street, and I would anticipate anywhere else would have a less intense impact. And especially, really, the majority of the traffic seems to be heading through and wanting to take a left to head to points north for commuting in the morning and the reverse in the afternoon. And I took a look at that intersection today, and that pattern does hold true. The question I have looking at the traffic volumes quickly is we certainly could study that if Cleveland at Seekonk is something that this board was interested in us looking at, but the question becomes to what end. And I don't think, based on the volumes, and Ken and I can obviously discuss this later if that's necessary, that is a candidate for a traffic signal. It seems like some improvements have already been done there. There is curbing there. There is a stop sign. I don't know that there's anything that we will find that will change that intersection in any way. So we certainly could study it, but to what end would be my question, and is that money maybe spent somewhere else, you know, in a better way? Crash data, I apologize for not providing that crash information. We did look into the crash information, and I can tell you there was 1 accident at Cleveland and Fruit, and we did do a quick calculation of that crash rate, and it is below the statewide average for unsignalized intersections. We also looked at the entire length of Cleveland Street and the number of crashes that occurred along Cleveland Street, and for that road, the number of crashes per million vehicle miles is again less than the Mass DOT average crash rate for a rural local road. So there were a few crashes. In fact, one was pretty close to the site. Someone hit a mailbox, evidently. But there's only, over the 3 years, I believe, it was a total of 8 crashes. So it is a below average crash history on Cleveland Street. In addition, they did ask us to do an evaluation of the geometrics on Cleveland Street and write that up, and we certainly can provide that to the board. I think probably the board and neighbors are familiar with what Cleveland Street is, right? But in comment 3, we certainly can provide that description. The comment 4 does raise, there is 2 different methodologies in the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, and it is true that Beta did raise a good point. The fitted curve regression equation does come out with a slightly higher trip generation, so I'm happy to share that with you. That would be during the AM peak hour 25 trips over the course of the hour, and in the PM peak hour would be 28 trips over the course of the hour. We did just do a quick test to see if that would change the level of service either at the driveway or at Fruit Street, and it doesn't change the level of service. It does increase the average delay by a second, however. So that increase of a few trips does make a little bit of a difference, but still, you know, an average of 1 second per vehicle average increase in delay. And the final comment, I'm sorry, there's 2 more. Comment T5 is about additional capacity analysis and queuing analysis. And again, I'm more than happy to go out and study additional intersections. But again, I asked the board to what end. What are we after? I don't know if expanding the study area to include 4 off-site intersections, but that we're going to have an impact of 5 vehicles on average serves the board's interest, but that certainly, we certainly could, but that impact, again, is going to be imperceptible to the average driver. The final item is, also has to do with those off-site intersections, and it's measuring site distance at those locations. And again, I'm happy to go out and measure the site distance at any location as the board pleases, but you know, I look forward to Ken's response and your guidance on those issues.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have one question. I may have missed it in here too, is, I see your count of traffic, you know, during the peak hours.
Yes.
You acknowledge there's 40 units here, right?
Yes.
Do you acknowledge how many cars per unit in the baseline?
Well, I can tell you, well, in the baseline, well, those units aren't there yet, but in the build condition, you mean?
What's the assumption? I know there are two-car garages here, I
Yes.
believe,
Oh,
but
certainly.
What's the assumption on how many vehicles exist at each unit?
Truly, it's not the number of vehicles at the unit, because there could be as many as 4 vehicles at a
Of course.
unit. It's more how many people travel during the highest hour of the morning.
Right.
And the example I like to give is I tend to leave for work a lot earlier than my husband. We don't both leave in the same hour. And so that's how the average rates are actually taken, counting at counts at entrances to subdivision. And they're summarized. There's hundreds of samples that count how many people leave each hour out of a subdivision. And in the highest hour, there's a certain rate associated with that of how many trips per hour. So not every single person leaves. In this case, I think your peak hour was 7:30 to 8:30. Not every single person is leaving their house in that same hour. Some people, like me, go into work a little bit earlier, so I'm long gone by 7:30. And some people work in you know, into hospitality and work a later shift, or, you know, so not every single person leaves in the same hour. So that's what we look at, what is considered the highest hour for the land use. And in that case, in this case, it is the commuting peak hours.
Right, but somehow the 40 units plays into how you determine that, right?
Right, so it's
you're basing it per
40,
unit versus-
there is a per unit number of trips times the 40, yes.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question too? So you've thrown and presented a lot of data to us, and we are not traffic people.
Yes.
You know. So we're learning as we go here. One question I have for you is when I read this, real quickly, am I reading this correctly in that, do you anticipate approximately a 9% increase in overall volume of traffic as a result of this development?
On Cleveland Street?
Well, I saw something where it said there was approximately 2,560 vehicles per day over a
Yes.
24-hour period. Then you anticipate an additional 230 daily trips?
Oh, yes. The additional trips, though, are in 2 directions. So at no one spot on Cleveland Street will you feel that impact.
But overall, the overall area would realize approximately a 9% increase in the volume of traffic. Doesn't matter which way it's going.
Well, yeah, 3% would be on the western half and 6% on the eastern
Got
half.
it, okay.
Would be the impact, yes.
Thank you. Any other questions before we ask Andy from Beta to present? Would you like to?
Actually, I'm going to defer to Ken Ho,
Okay.
our traffic engineer, but
Welcome, Ken.
Thank you. You're welcome. Just stand right here. Is that all right, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Great. So, for the record, my name is Ken Ho with Beta Group. We're the traffic consultant for the town, and what I'd like to do is to provide the board a very quick 1-minute summary of, as a traffic review of what what are the things that we look for in a traffic study. There are 5 key components that we look for in a traffic study, and these components are consistent with industry standard. First is the adequacy of the study area. Second, data collection. How are they collected? When they're collected. Third is the analysis methodology, which I can get into a little as I discuss that category. The results of the analysis, and finally, mitigation, if there are any, that's impacted as a result of this project. So I'd like to start with the study area, adequacy, As the applicant had indicated, they have looked at one intersection, which is the intersection of Cleveland Street and Fruit Street. And just looking at the overall site, Cleveland, it's a a connector from 115 to basically Seacon. A lot of people use that commute. So we think that's a key roadway, and it's not just a a minor or residential roadway. And we felt that just analyzing one intersection, it's not enough to assess the impact as a result of this project. So what we have identified is at least 4 intersections that we think should be included, and which is Route 115 at Cleveland Street, 115 at Holbrook, and certainly on the west of the project, which is Cleveland Street and Seacon Street, Fruit and Seacon. Some of these intersections, there are challenges. For example, sightline concern that we have that I think it's worth looking at, because especially the intersection at Fruit and Seacon, which 70% of the site traffic is coming, in around in that area, and there is a sightline concern when you drive at that intersection. So I think that needs to be looked at. I think it's not so much of capacity that we're looking for when we ask to look at the intersection. I think if it's anything else, it's the safety that we want to make sure that it's being addressed at these intersections. There is one intersection someone might ask, which is in between the site, which is the intersection of Cleveland and Holbrook, which is a very challenging, you can call it 3-way, 4-way, 5-way, they're kind of all over the place. So I think that's also worth looking at, because of the proposed site. The other key information I think the applicant had identified, which we always look for, very typical in a traffic study, is the safety analysis, which is the crash information for the intersection, which the proponent had just discussed. And we think these intersections that we identify, in addition to the one that they have identified, should also be looked at in terms of the safety aspect, this is crash analysis. So I think, the information that we have asked for, which the proponent will provide, has to do with Cleveland Street. Some of the horizontal and vertical alignment, and it's not a very wide street, Cleveland. It's fairly narrow, and if it's anything else, I think what's important to note is west of the site, the posted speed limit is 35, and east of the site, the posted speed limit is 30 miles per hour. And I know the proponent has did a speed study, which I like to request that if they could verify where the speed study was done. It has shown that the 85th percentile speed at 41 miles per hour, which is high, and that was being used to compare the posted 35 miles per hour, which is west of the site. In any case, I think we think the speed is on the high side, and so I think that's one example. I think we're looking at, if it's not capacity, I think safety should not be overlooked within the study area. The proponent had clarified regarding analysis methodology, and so we weren't sure, why they picked the methodology that had generated less traffic volume for the site. But I think the proponent had just explained they also did the analysis using the equation that generate a slightly higher volume, which is about 3% more than what is being used for the analysis. But in any case, we think the analysis should be analyzed based on the higher volume, but not the lower volume. We had requested, in terms of analysis results, that in addition to, the level of service, the delay that the applicant had just presented, that we think queuing analysis is important because a lot of time that's being overlooked, especially where you have a lot of stop, control intersection. And I think just to know how long some of the queues are at the intersection and the intersection that we have identified, I think that's important because that, tells you, how far queues are being backed up. And potentially, the longer the queue, sometimes, it's prone to a higher accident at an intersection. We have discussed site distance. We think some of the additional intersection that we discussed have, some sightline concerns. If there's anything else, I think, there aren't any mitigation that's being proposed as part of this study. We like to see the additional intersection done, especially from a safety aspect, some of the crashes analysis. If there's any safety improvements, that could be provided because we are adding, vehicle trips, new trips, throughout this study area. So I think in summary, there's some work that we think the applicant has to do in terms of provide a little more comprehensive study for this project.
Can I ask a question? Thank you for this. Does a traffic study, or should a traffic study include pedestrian or bicycle traffic? And in terms of mitigation, I don't know what that means. So I'm thinking, does that mean sidewalk installations, things like that? Is that the type of mitigation measures that may be considered?
That certainly could be, included. Studies certainly include, bicycles. A lot of times, if there are pedestrians, certainly that should also be included in the data.
I mean, to my knowledge, there are no sidewalks on Cleveland.
Correct.
So I didn't know if I don't even know if people walk up and down that street. To be honest, at 40 miles an hour, you might be risky. But the thing is that if you're going to add more traffic, would that at some point in the future necessitate the installation of sidewalks, which means, of course, widening the road, perhaps taking land? So I didn't know what we're getting into here when we're talking about traffic studies.
Right. I think that's a good question. And in the case of Cleveland Road, because there aren't any sidewalk, and I think it's a major taking to install sidewalk.
Sure.
And the question would be, how much is this project, will be contributed to, pedestrian safety? It's, I'm sure the applicant might think that it's unfair for them to bear the whole responsibility, and perhaps, a portion of it, could be assigned maybe for a study or design. So that certainly can be discussed.
You're recommending that they expand the study area to include, for example, Cleveland and 115. And just so I understand, the assumption is 70% goes east towards Seekonk, 30% goes west towards 115. But if hypothetically, out of these 40 units, everybody who works in those units decides to take the train, then all of a sudden you'd have a big skew. So that would be one of the reasons why, since we're using existing data and expanding on existing data, that you would recommend that that 115 and Cleveland be also studied.
Correct.
Okay.
I think the additional location that we have identified also could form the basis of, again, this is something that we could discuss. It's if one consideration is, is that if we require, a future traffic monitor, say for example, it could be 3 months or 4 months after full occupancy, just to evaluate if the traffic prediction that's shown in the report, it's still consistent with what's real life project being developed. So that's also one good example.
Joe, do you,
At the moment,
anybody decide to turn left on,
Yes.
on Main Street, on 115 from Cleveland, live there, that would be a huge.
Chris, I got a couple of
do,
questions when you're ready.
Does the study, two concerns I had was when the sight line is determined to this site, but what about all the other houses on Cleveland Street? I live at 64 Cleveland, which is a very sharp curve. The elderly woman across the street every day worries about going to get her mail because you cannot see around the corner coming westbound on Cleveland Street. So by adding 230 cars a day, it becomes even more difficult. So does the study at all take into account the other homes on Cleveland Street that will be affected by this sight line? And how does that play into it? How do you incorporate that? Because that to me would be, it's one thing to worry about the site itself and cars coming in and out, but what about all the existing residents on Cleveland Street and how this traffic going around? There are about roughly two other sharp turns, one at Holbrook Street and the one right there at about 64 and 75 Cleveland Street, and then the one that actually almost when you get to Seekonk Street, that all the road does take some pretty good S-curves, that the people at those homes, how does it affect them and how do they take into account this traffic study to those?
You're referring to individual residential driveway.
Correct.
That is a challenging, I mean, I think the study focused on key intersection, which we have identified, where there are existing site distance, and if we're adding more traffic to that intersection, and I think the applicant is obligated to do something because there is a safety concern today because of the sight line, and adding more trip to it. So I think the applicant is, obligated to do something to improve the safety of the intersection. Now, in the case of individual driveway, I think that's a little more challenging to address because there are a lot of driveways, and I have to say that it's not as easy to address individual driveways.
Okay. I'm just thinking sort of sectors of the road. I mean, I don't know if it's, again, an area where we look for mitigation, where the town and the applicant both contribute to try to improve those areas so that the sight line is improved. Does that, and I was wondering, was that taken into account?
I think certainly if it is a section of the roadway, and if I know we have requested that the proponent look at the horizontal alignment. If there is a section of the roadway where there's a horizontal curve that creates a safety concern, certainly that needs to be addressed, whether it's adding a sign or an advisory speed sign, to improve the safety of that section of the roadway. So I think hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, it does.
Would it be okay if I comment on that as well?
Sure.
Typically, as Ken has outlined, we look at more intersections because that's where you're going to encounter more of a capacity issue if there's going to be a capacity issue, and you have many more trips kind of conflicting. So if there's going to be a crash problem, that's more likely where you're going to have a crash problem. Taking a look at sight lines or other limitations along the roadway, again, is something that if it is a concern of the town or if it is an appropriate place for mitigation, as I indicated before, if the town doesn't have a concern, say, to those intersections to the west where we're not expecting a lot of impact, some of the funds that the applicant would spend studying locations like that instead could look at looking at mitigation. The only point that I do raise to the board is mitigating curves in the road tends to be either an enforcement for speed issue or it tends to be a removing tree issue, which again is something I don't know if the town wants to go down that road, but that, that tends to be the way if you are having a sightline constraint, that tends to be one of the ways to make those sight lines clearer. But I just wanted to raise that as something, for the board's awareness, and if that is a particular concern of the board.
The other question I had maybe is how how is school buses, do these studies take into account school buses? That, unlike intersections, they stop at individual homes. So do these studies take into account the school buses in that period of time that the studies are done? And how do you handle?
I would, I can briefly talk about it, and I would defer that to Jen. If there is a bus stop location, if the intent is, especially at the new site, if there's going to be a new bus location, I think that certainly needs to be looked into. So.
That's actually a good question, and I'm not certain yet what the plan is for buses at this location, but I can tell you when we do count traffic, that included in our heavy vehicle count are any of the buses. I would say nothing was notated or told to me about buses stopping at exactly this location or exactly at Fruit Street, so I could ask the technician about that, but I did not hear anything specifically about a bus stopping and creating a delay at either of those two locations.
Okay. Judy, do you have any at this moment? Joe?
It's safe to assume, though, that there'd be a bus stop associated with this community.
I would think so, yes.
Right, and typically what happens is that the school department is the one that would approve where that school bus stop is. That's typically the condition you would have in a permit. I think we actually talked about this with the other project.
Right, yes.
We've made provisions for a bus stop to the extent that we actually propose a little turnout and a shelter in this location. It's just probably not as visible distance-wise there, but we have a striped, paved, widened shoulder, and at that location we have a shelter. Thought that would be a nice touch on the project. These parking spaces here are designated for off-street parking for visitors. And we also had central mail box in that location, so residents who wanted to get their mail at a central location would quickly park in those spaces. But this widened striped area here was designated as a bus shelter. We have not, and the school department will change their bus routes from year to year, depending on school-age children moving, growing up, and going into a different school, and those patterns will change.
That's not my, I agree with you.
Yes, but the addition of another stop, and whether that bus would potentially pull in and come back out, or just stop on Cleveland Street. And so we've made that provision if the school department, chooses to have a stop.
Is that going to be a public way?
This will not be a public way,
And
no.
I think you probably want to talk to the school department,
Yeah, they
because I'm
use,
not sure that they
my
will
experience is
pull
that they
into-
stop at the head of new
That's right.
development.
Yep,
from
they
what
would
my
stop,
experience
and that's our expectation too. They would stop here, which is why we have a sidewalk from the bus shelter out to Cleveland Street.
Which further begs the question then, in terms of a traffic study, do you factor in a bus? Let's just pretend there are 20 kids that are going to get on a bus right there while the bus is idling on Cleveland Street at rush hour. Concern, issue? I
It
don't know.
creates an intersection, basically, an intersection.
Well, it's going to definitely create a delay.
Yeah.
Well, the question is that also happening with other homes on that street? If school buses are stopping on Cleveland Street elsewhere to pick up children in other homes?
But I see,
I'm not sure you have a unique condition here.
well, the unique condition would be that 20 of them would get on, so if a bus is sitting there for 5 minutes while kids load on the bus, I'm wondering if that should be factored into again, we're learning about traffic studies. So is that something that should be contemplated in a traffic study?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd just like to. I think the answer is absolutely. I think it needs to be taken into consideration in the design of the driveway. For example, if a pull-out for the bus is necessary, in the event that the bus has to, idle for 5 minutes, wait for kids to, load and unload, so that it doesn't impede through traffic. And that's something that I think the applicant should take into consideration.
I think that some consultation with the school department is probably a good idea. Find out what they're requiring so you actually know what you're opting for.
Ray, do we have anything from our chiefs with regard to the traffic study?
I have a email that I received from the police chief, where he was concerned about the speed of the traffic. Just pull it out here. If I may, I'll just read it. This is from Chief Stone, our police chief. I have concerns for how many additional vehicles will be traveling Cleveland Street to and from this project during construction and entering and exiting the housing when complete. This project would require a widening of roads and sidewalks to existing infrastructure as a result of high amount of proposed occupancy and associated building structures. Chuck Stone. So he's concerned that you're going to put more traffic on that road than its capacity. I think the background is that that road is well-traveled and is kind of a fast road with blind corners, is what I would describe it as.
Anything from Chief Cole yet?
I have not received anything from the fire chief.
So those comments have been referred to the peer review consultants.
I don't know if they've gone over to you guys yet. Okay, I can forward those to
I'll
you.
make sure they get a copy.
Yeah, the normal secretary for the zoning board is on vacation this week, so we're a little short-staffed, so sorry about that.
Do we have any more questions from the board before we open up to the public?
Chris, I just have a question.
Yes.
And this is dealing with walkability. One of the components of this kind of project, a 40B project, is the ability to have access to public transportation, which would be the train station. I was looking through the documents to see, I read it somewhere, it talked about the distance to the train station, which is approximately 2 miles. And you can go 2 different ways, obviously, to get to the train station. But my concern is that walkability. I mean, are we creating an environment that, as was portrayed in the application, that people can walk to the train station, get the public transportation? We're creating an affordable project, so folks that do apply for the affordable component of this project, can they get to the public transportation so that they can get to work? I'm not seeing any conversation about that, and I'm just asking if there is any contemplation of how public transportation would work with this project. And just to add to that, which is, my experience, is the shoulders that are on Cleveland Street and the other streets, is there enough room to safely walk during the day, and particularly during the wintertime when it's dark out? You're walking home from work, and I hate to see one of our residents get clipped as they're trying to make their way back home. So I just ask that you think about that and maybe respond to it.
All I can say at this time, and maybe Ted had some different considerations, but I don't believe in the application we portrayed that the train station would be something that we anticipated to be walkable. The application requests distances to certain points from the site, and we just simply provided those distances.
Okay.
So I don't believe you'll find anywhere in the application where we portrayed or insinuated that we expected this to be a highly walkable path from here to the train station or the library, for example, or town hall. But to that end, we don't have any plans or expectations to construct sidewalks or widen shoulders or stabilize shoulders. I mean, those are significant undertakings. Constructability alone, never mind the land takings, et cetera. And then where does that end? Because a sidewalk to Fruit Street, where there's no sidewalk on Fruit Street now, or a sidewalk to Seekonk Street where there's no sidewalk, I can't fathom constructing a sidewalk from the center of town here to the site. I think that would be completely unreasonable.
Closest sidewalk is Main Street, right?
Sidewalk on 115, yes.
Right.
Yeah. And there's one on Main Street.
One on Main Street.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's a response I just wanted to provide you, while we're here.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'm going to open it up to the public for comment. This gentleman was first. I'll go ahead.
Hi, I'm Gene Bailey, 87 Cleveland Street, and I couldn't help but... Hi, I'm Gene Bailey at 87 Cleveland Street, and I couldn't help but I didn't get it right the last time either. Hi, I'm Gene Bailey.
Know your name.
Across the street from the site. I have tried to walk to the train site. You can't. You have to step off the shoulders of the road, so, I mean, you can't do it. I do it occasionally, and I walk towards the traffic, and to be quite honest, and now with the poison ivy, I don't even try it. You have to step off the road. And if you run on the road, same thing, and on weekends, and I realized that wasn't part of the traffic study, I sit on my front and I can see the people walking and running and biking down that street, so it's going to be a little bit of a burden if you add this amount of traffic.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, Kathy, 88 Cleveland. I think you all know I have vision impairment, so I have walked it. I thought it was on. Can you hear me now? All right. Sorry, Kathy, 88 Cleveland. I have had occasion to walk back and forth from the train station. It's not easy, especially having vision impairment. I was forced to, given my circumstances at the time. It's doable, but you are taking a high risk. You do have to be out in the street, multiple spots. There was an occasion once where it got dark, and I had to stop at the Butters property, I think, because at that point there was no shoulders. It was pitch black, and I had to call someone to come and get me. I was only one or two houses away. That's how bad it is. I also participated in an internship with the Disability Policy Consortium, and I was asked to do a project. I chose transportation and did a sidewalk study. I did find that the town has a sidewalk study or a plan, and Cleveland was on it, but it's outdated. And when I did investigation both at the state level and our local town, it would require the widening of the road, as you know. Any major construction, once you start, it impacts other issues. I talked with a number of neighbors just to get a feel for if people would be interested or not. Didn't talk with a lot, but, you know, people weren't opposed, but again, everyone likes the country aspect of the road. They like the turns, they like the trees, the stone walls. It's picturesque. And the people that do bicycle by regularly, you do have to watch out. Also, when it comes to sight lines, we have trees along the shoulder, and we have to be very careful exiting our driveway every single time. And with the extra traffic, it will be very, very difficult. I'd be also interested, if I may, we've had another development down off of Winston. At that time, was there a traffic study done? And was that done in a non-summer months? Just be curious, because maybe that would be a good reference point to see how it compares to this study in terms of traffic volume. Might be a more truer indication if it's non-summer months.
I think,
Suggestion.
I don't think Winston was completed, or part of it was completed when this traffic study was done in May. Right. I think there warrants maybe during some of this expanded look if we do it. Also because we have the new development, the 9 houses going on Holbrook Street are also going to be adding to our traffic situation. There are 9 houses on Holbrook Street that are being added right now and being
Right.
built.
Right. I didn't know
So that's
if
going to be added as well.
when Winston was being developed, if they were required to do a traffic study at that time.
Oh, that's the question?
Yeah, because if it was
Can
done
you check on that?
I don't know that it was.
spring, summer,
Okay.
I don't believe that there was a traffic study done for
Okay.
Fern Ridge Estates.
Right. Can we look into that and just check, Ray? Okay.
What is that project, just so I know?
It's called Fern Ridge Estates.
Is it a subdivision
It's
or?
a sub, yeah, it's a subdivision, 13 lots?
It has 2
Sounds all
accesses.
right.
One is Winston and the other one is
Is it 16 lots?
Turner Street. So it has 2 actually egresses and exits, but I think it's 20 to 30 homes.
How many?
At least 20 to 30, Ray, or
No, 16.
only 16?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my observation about both the garbage trucks and school buses, I've been home 24/7 a lot lately, and the school buses stop at each individual home at their end of their driveways because the kids cannot stand out on the road. So for this scenario, they would be stopping right in front of our house, both directions, and then a hop skip right next door to pick up these additional children, how many they would be. And having any more than 10 kids is going to take quite a delay. I cannot picture what commuters are going to have to go through. It will be unpleasant if the bus stopped on the road, because they stop traffic now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Debbie Boris, 10 Cleveland Street. About 6 months ago, maybe even longer, I saw an article in the paper about a development that was very similar to this. And it was close to the center of town. And my question is, are there two developments going in? Or is this one that's been moved to from the center of town?
I think you're referring to 106, 108 Main Street.
Yeah, I guess so.
That is an approved 40B that is actually ongoing.
So this is the
another-
second one?
This is the second development, yes.
Okay, so, oh, okay, well, that's good, I suppose. But it's not going to be good for, you know, the traffic. The people, they did the study based on the 40 units. But nobody has one car. Everybody's going to have two cars, and maybe more. So I would double that study if, you know, because it's unrealistic to base it on 40 cars. Thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm hoping it's still on.
Yep,
Another
you have to wait
question.
your turn. Hold on.
Kathy again.
Hold-
I'm
Kathy, hold
sorry.
on one second,
I'm
yes.
sorry.
Quick question on the sight lines. How many feet from the exit is the sight line considered? Because I've stood in Mr. O'Hart's driveway and looked to the left and right. There's not a lot of space there, and then it's trees. So how many feet each way are you considering on the sight line, especially if you're turning right, which, or left, I guess?
I'll let Jennifer address that.
Certainly. We actually measure the sight distance from the driver on Cleveland Street. Will they see you pull out and stop in time to avoid a collision? So that sightline measurement, as you're approaching from the east along Cleveland, you can see the sight driveway from 480 feet away, and approaching from the west along Cleveland, it's just under 400 feet away. You could see the bumper of a vehicle that's about to pull out of the sight driveway location.
Quick question, what about the person pulling out, so they could see 400 feet each way as well?
I don't have a notation on that, but again, the person who has to see the obstacle, being the car pulling out, and apply the brakes and have enough time to stop is the person on Cleveland, and so that is the measurement of safety, is if that person can stop in time. But I can check my notes for you on that.
No, just curious, okay.
Can I follow up on that?
Sure.
Is there a standard that you use to look at the driver exiting the property and what they would see? And do you normally include those in traffic studies? Because to me, in that location, I think that's one of the real safety hazards, is if you sit in the driveway and you look to your left, and I think to the left, which would be west, is probably the area that's most concerning, because as you stick your nose out into the street, you don't see what's coming until a certain point, and I think that's the big concern that folks are worried about too. Is you come vomit down the road, and there's, next thing you know, there's a car halfway out in the street.
Sure. Yep, no, I understand, and I do agree with you. We did see that was the side that was more limited. One of the things that will happen here that, of course, with the other homes in the area, there probably was not, the driveway opening was not as wide and didn't have the curb, the radii to the entrance. That clears a little bit more of the trees so that the sight lines at this location will be better than the typical driveway along the street. But we certainly can measure that. That's considered intersection sight distance. And what that is for the driver pulling out of the side street, how far he can see in each direction, and does he believe he has a gap big enough to pull out and get up to 85% of the speed of the traveling public on Cleveland. And that's, when someone typically feels safe, is, will I be able to pull up and get up to close to the speed of the people driving by?
Exactly.
And that is a different measurement. Again, it's not a pure measurement of safety like the other one is. The other one is, if something happens, if you pull out and you stall right there, can I see you and stop before I hit you? The other is more, do I feel comfortable? But I certainly can provide you with some information on that as well. But again, with what is expected for the driveway opening, I would anticipate that the minimums for the intersection sight distance would also be met, because the stopping sight distance is far exceeded for the speed that people are traveling.
To expand on that 85%, would it be 85% of the posted speed limit, which was either 30 or 35, or would it be the actual of 41?
The actual.
Do you have a distance actually between, from the intersection, where the driveway meets the road? Is there a distance back that you measure from? Is it?
For the driver's eye, yes, the
Yeah.
particular measurements, because obviously you're not out at the front of the car, you're back.
Right.
Again, the one I was quoting and have the backup information on with me was for the stopping sight distance, and that's for the bumper, so that is up at the edge of the roadway.
Okay, but you don't know what that number is offhand?
I don't know it off the
Okay.
top of my head.
Fair enough.
Judy, is there any other questions from the,
You have another
oh,
lady.
Kathy?
Sorry. Kathy, in regards to other 40B developments, don't we also have one on Route 1A? And is there another one off of Park Street?
We don't have them yet.
They're in the discussion stage?
Nothing's come in front of this board yet. Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Debbie again. This study doesn't even take into consideration the truck traffic from building the site, which I know that it's taken over 4 years to build the new development on Churchill, and it's been nonstop trucks, and it's going to be nonstop trucks again. And I don't know if anybody has taken that into consideration, all the damage that it does to the roads. So, another question.
Jennifer, would you like to comment?
We did not do a particular analysis of the truck impact during construction. I certainly can speak to the developer to talk about how he anticipates that construction to be undertaken, because obviously that varies significantly by development, how they plan to go about doing it, and what volume, and how they plan to stage that.
Okay. What would be the entrance and egress? Has any thought about that? I mean, you have 115, which is a truck route, and then you have Seekonk Street, which is obviously not a truck route. Would they be, obviously Seekonk would probably be the preferred method because it's shorter distance, but would they be using the truck route, which is 115?
My assumption is that certainly he could,
Sure.
speak to the contractors to try to control that as much as possible.
Okay. Judy, is there any, and Ray, you can chime in as well.
Sure.
Some of the safety concerns we've discussed, widening, I realize that we can't put the complete burden
Right.
on the developer.
Right.
How does that normally get handled? I think some of the things Ken mentioned, I think we'd like to see the expanded review. What is the vehicle to look at some of those safety concerns, and how do we how do we handle those or address those? And can we address those between the town and the developer? And how have you seen that done?
Issues like that certainly can be addressed in a Chapter 40B development. I mean, the issue, of course, is that many of the things people are talking about are conditions that already exist. And so you have to separate conditions that already exist, like there's already no sidewalks, so there's already a walking issue there. So you can't say that the new project is going to create a walking safety problem that doesn't already exist. It might exacerbate it. So typically what you would see is that the applicants, consultants would respond to the peer review, and you would do this additional analysis, and you would then try to determine really what are the project's responsibilities for whatever additional impacts are identified. Typically, a peer review consultant might then advise the board. I mean, jump in if you disagree with me, but this is typically what I've seen, is that you have experts, and I would use them so that you're not trying to make this up, because you can't. But if they do their analysis and the peer review consultant reviews it and says, okay, I'm just going to make this up for the sake of discussion, but 10% of the problem is now going to be attributable to this project, but there's a 90% that's already there, then the applicant could contribute money to the town to address some of the mitigation. But of course, that then means the town also needs to come to the plate and actually do its share. So those are the kinds of discussions that can get a little bit hairy. I mean, you don't control the capital budget, you don't control appropriations at town meeting. All you can do is say the developer should provide a certain amount of money, but you do that knowing that there's also an obligation for the town, and I think that internally you're going to want to have some discussion about that.
Mr. Chair, if I may, what in our experience is we can offer some suggestions to the town, and that can be further discussed prior to proposing it to the applicant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Ray, can we, I don't think we need to take a vote, but I think we'd probably like to see the expanded analysis and some of the back and forth analysis that they are planning on, that Ken has mentioned. Can we have that done?
Yeah, you can
And
ask
maybe
that
have
done.
some of this discussion between Jennifer and Ken with regard to
Absolutely.
some of these safety concerns? I mean, does the board agree with that?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, sorry to interrupt, but I
Sure.
just hope to take a minute or two to summarize before the discussion of what the next step is ensues. Sitting, listening, and I appreciate the summary of what the board's sort of purview is. I don't think the applicant would disagree that the board has a burden and a responsibility and an interest in and a need for full and thorough information to be properly vetted by your consultant. And to that end, I'm confident that the applicant may be willing to provide that additional information. However, I would ask you in your discussions of what's next to sort of view the process through a lens of practicality and bring it back to the realm of 40B. And it seems to me that the three areas we're talking about are really the study area and whether or not it should be expanded, whether or not mitigation is necessary, and specifically what, if any, is attributable or made necessary by the project itself, and finally, safety concerns. And briefly, with respect to the study area, I think our consultant is suggesting that there may be one additional intersection that warrants study. The traffic study, I think, I'll defer to the experts certainly, but seems to show already that the area studied will not decrease in terms of level of service. So it sort of makes sense intuitively to even, you and I, that if within a certain area the level of service is not going to decrease, if you expand the study outward, that it's not going to decrease outward because traffic dissipates. So whether or not, 5 intersections should be studied, I'm not sure we'd agree with that, but maybe there is some number that makes some sense. In terms of mitigation, as your consultant has said, a lot of the concerns expressed are, I'm sure, valid, but they seem to express concerns about existing conditions, and frankly, it's not the applicant's responsibility to fix or remedy an existing condition unless it can be shown that this project will create that condition. There is a standard under 40B which says that a safety concern really has to be a serious and legitimate safety concern to, in the words of the law in this area, to outweigh the need for local affordable housing. And it doesn't seem to me that that standard is likely to be met in this case. And finally, with respect to safety and speed, again, I'm sure the concerns about the roadway alignment or more far-reaching intersection problems with queuing or alignment or sight distance exist. I'm sure that adding sidewalks would be a welcome addition. I'm sure that adding lighting would be a welcome addition. I'm sure that a realignment of certain sections of Cleveland Street would be nice, but those sorts of safety concerns are expensive and not of the nature or the type that are appropriate to be borne by the applicant. With respect to speed, it seems that part of that is an enforcement issue. So in summary, I would ask the board to, again, view what the applicant should do in terms of additional study through that lens of, as Ms. Connolly, I think, aptly put it, to what end? Even if there's additional studies, what is the likelihood that it's going to show that the project is going to create some safety concern or exacerbate an existing safety concern to the extent that the applicant should remedy it? So I thank you for considering that in your deliberations.
Thank you.
Does your consultant have a response to that? Ken, do you have any?
I think I'll respond.
Okay. That's why I put you on the spot.
Maybe one more.
Absolutely.
Oh,
You just need a microphone.
hi there, I'm Tim. I live on Fruit Street. And with the discussion, you have to say that everybody says that, right? Hello. What I've heard tonight is we're sort of in a position where if we determine this traffic study that there is a risk and there's a safety risk, I don't know the thresholds that it needs to meet in order to hit that risk enough that we would say, hey, this is a real problem, and then we need to mediate. My question is there any consideration for a reduction in the number of units in order to deal with the kind of, as a way of mediating some of this risk? Or is that, where does that stand? Because certainly the way to deal with traffic is to have less cars.
I would think part of our peer review and part of why we do this with regard to 40Bs is to determine those type of things, to make sure that the number of units will not impact the safety of the surrounding neighborhoods and residents of the town. So that's one of the reasons why we do these peer reviews and do this in-depth analysis on 40Bs. Ray, any other?
No, I mean, I think you summed it up. It's implicit in what we're doing here.
Go ahead.
One more, very brief one. Yes.
Nope.
I'm sending it to you now.
We're going to give you a special place up here, Kathy, okay?
Yeah, I think that should be on the board. Got it, okay.
I had a question. It was just sitting in the back of my head, and I wanted to get it out there before you guys wrap up, about the peak
Could you
hour.
state your name again and your address?
I'm sorry, Medora Champagne from Seneca. About the peak hours that were used in the study. I think it was referenced that the peak hour time frame that was used to generate the data was it 7:30 to 8:30?
To 9, I think it was. 7 to 8 and 7 to 9.
7 to 9, 4 to 6.
4 to 6.
7 to 9 and 4 to 6. My concern with
Okay.
that was just you might be selling yourself short on the data that would come prior in the morning, because in my experience, I've had experience in a lot of different ways working since I've lived in town for about 10 years. When I was a commuter, the train I took, the train that 90% of the people who take the train in the morning take, in my experience, leaves at 7:20, I think, 7:15, 7:20. excuse me, that's still the schedule. I think you're probably missing some of the data from people who are actually going into town in the direction that is not viewed as the heavy direction in the peak hour study. At that point, filling up the commuter lots and leaving. In my experience, when I would try and take the later train, which I believe leaves at 8 o'clock, when I arrived at the commuter lots, there was a limited amount of parking. Sometimes there's no parking. Sometimes I'm very unsafely speeding down Main Street to try and catch the train in Walpole, where there's more parking. I think that there's earlier data that would probably benefit from inclusion in the study if it hasn't already been.
I can just very quickly address that. As I said, we did do an automatic traffic recorder on Cleveland Street for 24 hours. And so over the course of the 24 hours, those peak hours were, which you already mentioned, from 7 to 8 a.m. and from 5 to 6 p.m. So we did capture what on Cleveland Street. It is possible that earlier in the morning, as she said, maybe the distribution's a little different, maybe more people are headed west than east, but the total traffic on Cleveland Street is less earlier in the day. 7 to 9 is the highest hour of the morning.
Ken, any?
Kathy?
Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Kathy.
My turn. Kathy again. In regards to the traffic heading towards 115, I hear it start at 5 in the morning, and it's pretty steady at 5:30, 5:45. So along with what Medora is saying, those early trains are heavily used. And I lost my train of thought. Oh well, such is life. Anyone else?
Okay. No other comments? Okay.
Oh, I remembered. Sorry. The traffic study, when we talked last time, I think there was a question by the audience that asked about the turning radius of vehicles going into the site. And obviously that would be, how about the large vehicles going in? The school buses, fire trucks, garbage trucks, the whole 9 yards, plows. The feeling was that it was kind of a narrow turn, and I'd be curious to know what the results of that point are.
Stephen?
As we indicated, I don't think anyone expects school buses to enter the project, but if they did, I don't think there'd be any problem. We did run a turning template using a very conservative fire engine dimensions. We are waiting for specific dimensions of the most restrictive apparatus in the fire department's fleet for that information, but we don't, due to the distance in which the property line is set back off of Cleveland Street, this 20-foot radius, there's no issues with garbage trucks. Like as I indicated, we ran a fire engine using auto turn software, and the fire engine makes its way all the way through this project without any issues, crossing over curbs or things like that. It's very common for fire engines and other large vehicles to cross over lanes as they turn. You probably see that in your day-to-day travels, what they call maybe an oversteer. That is very common and often necessary, but the most restrictive vehicle, in our opinion, being a fire engine or a ladder truck, makes these maneuvers with very little difficulty. We don't believe school buses will enter into this project site.
Thank you. Thank you.
The chief is probably going to comment on that anyway. I guess the chief will comment on the
Yes. I think he's working with the chief to find the most restrictive and the dimensions of the trucks.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. And I don't know what the board wants to discuss it here. I know as one member of the board, and I can only speak for myself, is I think we have to put a lot of, I agree with you with the mitigation. We're not asking the developer to do anything that is not his responsibility. And I'm also not suggesting, because I think the people on Cleveland Street, as well as the developer, doesn't want to lose the character of the street, the sloping turns. Again, safety is obviously the number one concern for the people in the new development as well as the existing residents. But I think we have to be very concerned, and we have to use the chief of police's experience and knowledge when he says he has concerns. I, for one, feel that it warrants that we look at the other streets that Ken has identified to make sure that, I hate to say no stone unturned, but to make sure that the people who are here are satisfied that we have done everything we can to make sure that 115 Seccong Street, I think those are the two other roads, Fruit Street, have been reviewed as part of the study.
In Holbrook.
And Holbrook as well. So that's my opinion as a member of the board. I don't know what the other board members feel with regard to that. I think Mike, I guess to summarize, I would say we'd like to see to expand the review to those streets you have mentioned. I think it's in T1 for review. I think that's important. And to look at some of the safety issues, or to have a conversation between you and Jennifer with regard to, is there any safety issues that may be created by this development that we really have to look at to make sure that it doesn't impact the residents of the town and on Cleveland.
No, I agree. I just want to be clear, which intersections are we talking about adding besides the one they already studied? I know you said
The recommendation of the consultant
Right.
was to include the intersections of Cleveland at Route 115, Holbrook at 115, Cleveland at Seccong, and Fruit at Seccong.
And which one did they look at already?
They looked at Fruit
Fruit
and
and Seccong.
Cleveland, I think.
Right.
Cleveland. all
Fruit
right.
in Cleveland, okay?
Fruit and Seccong, okay. No reference to Main Street and
115.
Seccong?
Yeah, because it wouldn't really be Main Street because it
far.
doesn't, yeah, too far
okay,
out.
fine, okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Ken.
I think in my presentation, I have identified. I think in my presentation, I have actually identified there's one more intersection between all the intersection, which is Holbrook and Cleveland.
I just
You
mentioned
did?
that.
Okay, awesome.
Right. And I think, is it possible to have the two you review some of those safety issues that again, we're not looking for sidewalks if that's not appropriate. We're just trying to say what makes sense. Is there anything we're seeing that this property brings to the table that we should address? And I think you had mentioned that in your analysis originally.
Can I ask for just clarification? Are you looking for safety like crash history, sight lines, those type of things? Do you want us also to count those intersections and do the level of service at those intersections? Or is this just a safety concern exercise? I just don't want to, spend more of my client's money than I need to. So can we identify what the board's concerns are at those additional locations?
I'll let the other board, I think we have to defer to Ken as our expert, and I think you and him could probably come to that, conclusion. Yeah. Unless the board has any other.
No, I think Ken would obviously be
Ken
able
is
to
more than
detail what's
capable.
required.
I think you had mentioned you're going to do some additional crash study information as well already, so I think that's to get a balance. I think you two can, as the experts, could probably determine that.
Authorizing direct communication with Beta?
Correct. And you can, Ray, would you like to be a part of that discussion? Do you want them to go through you, or do you want them to speak to each other?
No, it's okay if they speak to
Okay.
each other.
Okay?
We'll copy him on if we
Okay.
make any
That'd be good.
decisions
Thank
about
you.
things.
Great. We have another question?
Bill Farley, 88 Cleveland. And I'm just curious to know, it's just more of a question than anything, if you're doing these studies of the roads, Cleveland and Fruit, I think coming from Seccong onto Fruit onto Cleveland is a pretty dangerous area because you can't see anything to the right as you come to that intersection.
Would you repeat coming from where?
Coming from Seccong towards Cleveland on Fruit Street, the corner of Cleveland and Fruit, it's nearly impossible to see the cars coming up over the hill until it's too late. I don't like doing that corner until it's dark out and the headlights are on. So, I understand the traffic study is primarily Cleveland and Cleveland Fruit, but I was hoping it would include the addition of cars on Cleveland, so coming from Fruit.
I think
Nope.
that, Jennifer,
Yeah, we will address that sight line that he's
Okay.
concerned with, yes.
thank you.
This may be a ridiculous question at this point, but I'm just curious about something. Excuse me. When I look at that map and I see the footprint of the land and the way it's sort of an upside-down funneled, if you will, where the narrow point channels onto Cleveland Street, And my question really is one of, is that the only possible point to touch Cleveland Street? Is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless you have a boat.
Or a plane. Okay.
Okay.
And it touches no other roadways, obviously. That plow line touches no other roadways.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Very good. That concludes our traffic portion of this meeting for this evening. At our last meeting, there was some engineering study information that you folks were going to work on, and we haven't received anything, I don't think, Ray, correct?
No.
Where do we stand with that?
I'm happy to give you an update, Mr. Chairman. We've been working with the Conservation Commission, as you're probably aware. We were a little reluctant to submit information in a revised fashion in dribs and drabs. Outcomes of some aspects of the Conservation Commission process could, drastically change our revisions. So we're always a little hesitant to provide information that could be irrelevant. So I'm happy to report that today, our wetland scientist and the Conservation Commission's wetland scientist met on site to start the process of agreeing on wetland flag delineation, which was one of the biggest challenges we were potentially facing in any redesign. What I can tell you at this time, it does not appear that there will be any drastic redesign measures required that can't easily be addressed on our part. So since we have already done a significant amount of work in that direction towards addressing Beta's engineering comments, it really should be a fairly straightforward process to get that over the goal line and get this board revised plans, written responses, corresponding stormwater calculations, etc. So I can't give you a time frame, but I can tell you that the information we've been waiting for, we feel as though we almost have or have to a level of satisfaction where we think we can comfortably start to finalize those revisions. In addition, it may be an opportunity now to let you know that another component of information we were waiting for, which has been resolved, is the water pressure. You received a letter from Environmental Partners dated July 7th, I believe, confirming that as a result of our hydrant flow tests, that the existing municipal system will adequately provide domestic and fire flows to the project. So we're happy to report that and happy with the results of that. So again, another component that we were waiting for to hopefully address things, in a more wholesale fashion.
Good. Yes, we did receive that. Thank you. So you will let us know when you have the responses to that engineering study that we talked about last.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
You will
As
have.
you conclude other pieces.
That's correct. Yeah, it's we look at it as one whole, comprehensive revision. So you have all the information kind of in one package to review, and I would anticipate that information that as a result of anything related to some additional traffic stuff, at least that would be reflected in the plans in the vicinity of the scale of the plans show, whether it's intersection site distance or pavement width and a little bit more plan data on the Cleveland Street corridor in which the plan scale will allow us to show. You'll see on revised plans. So it'll be a comprehensive package that you'll see addressing all of those items.
Andrew, do you have any concerns with that, or is that
No, that's fairly typical. I mean,
okay?
as you stated, the BVW, the wetland line issue, was one of the larger issues, and depending on where that agreement came to, greatly impacted what their revisions would be. So it made sense to hold off on those revisions for now.
Okay. Great. Okay. Did you want a chance, and not, you don't have to do it this evening, to review it, or have you had a chance to review the water flow analysis, or?
I reviewed it in passing. I haven't had a detailed review of it. I'm happy to address it at the next meeting, or
Okay.
whatever.
Is that all right with the applicant to review that at the next meeting as well?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. We're comfortable with it, and I would
Just
expect
just so
that
you
to
have a
be.
chance to
Thank you.
review it. Okay. Ray, any other concerns?
No, I'm still hung up on the ability to walk on Cleveland Street. I swear that I saw something in some guidelines through the state. So I was just looking for that.
I think I may be able to help you with that.
Thank you.
Ostensibly, when the subsidizing agency reviews a project eligibility application, one of the things that the developers are asked to comment on is the extent to which the project addresses the state's smart growth principles. That is not a deal breaker. It's simply an inquiry that the state subsidizing agencies do. So you probably saw something in the project eligibility application about that?
That's probably where I saw it.
Yeah, I have a
that
feeling
makes
that's
sense.
where
Yeah, and you know, it just, from a planner's perspective, I look at a project of this size in this area, and when you have neighbors that say, hey, it's really not that safe on this road, and it's really not a great idea to add 43 more homes and families to this neighborhood and not even consider any kind of improvements to the road. It just bothers me on a personal level. It bothers me on a professional level. It just, I can't advise the town to say this, this should just go forward this way. So, I look to the applicant and I say, there are things that I think you should be looking at, and maybe there's certain spots on the road that I think you should be looking at to make it safer. You are going to have pedestrians stepping out of this property. Some may be, jeopardized. And I think it's important, and I think that's what the neighbors are asking for. I heard it loud and clear in the last few meetings, and I hear it loud and clear tonight. I hope you do too.
I think it's something that a lot of planners struggle with
Yeah.
this whole process, is how does one decide that a site is suitable for this kind of density when it's located kind of in a way that's almost inherently not smart growth?
Right.
And yet, apparently the subsidizing agencies aren't all that concerned about it. So it falls to the boards of appeal to have to deal with these issues when perhaps if there was different gatekeeping going on, it wouldn't happen.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, that is one of our roles here as gatekeepers, and to
Yeah.
try to make sure we get the best development that we can. And as a zoning board, you don't come up with these questions as often as the planning board does, but
Right.
it's certainly, I think, in everyone's heart, there's a sensitivity towards those types of issues, because, every once in a while, we do walk, and we do ride bicycles, or we have children that do those kinds of things, and we worry about them, and we want to make this place safe for us as well as our other residents.
Thank you. We also received from Betsy Pine, the Norfolk Historical Commission. I don't know, have you received that as well yet?
Yes, we received it this afternoon.
We have not, we haven't had a chance to review it either, so maybe next meeting we can comment.
What is that? I haven't seen this.
The Norfolk Historical Commission just reviewed the property,
I see.
and we can make sure you get a copy of it.
Yeah.
Can I
As
also,
well.
I'm sorry, I just want to go back to the water the water study here. Because, is this something we need to review further? In other words,
We're going to review it at the next meeting.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, the whole study, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, sorry, okay.
The report you have was prepared for the Water Commission, the Water Department, or? what
No, it was
is
actually prepared for the town of Norfolk.
By Environmental Partners Group?
Right, right. But Andrew hasn't had a chance to review it yet.
I see.
And Bob McGee, who is the director, has not, as far as I know, commented on it yet as well.
He has not provided
He
any
has not
specific
provided- so
comments
he-
himself.
I think it's still in its infancy. We just want to make sure that Andrew's had a chance, obviously, to review it, as well as maybe if Bob McGee has any input.
Sure.
Even though it was prepared for him, but still, we haven't heard.
Right.
But, and I think the same thing with the Historical Commission
Mhm.
report. We haven't had a chance to review it. You just received it today. So, I have some questions. Judy may know the answer. I don't even know if you can consider historical properties within a 40B.
This is going on right now in 2 other communities I'm working in.
Okay.
So, probably not, is, I guess, the easiest answer.
Right.
If it's a local historic district, it's a local bylaw, and the board sits in the seat of the Historic District Commission. If it's National Register eligible, Mass Historical Commission may eventually look at it after the comprehensive permit has passed, and the subsidizing agency has to file an environmental notification form under MEPA. That gets distributed out to all the other state agencies, and at that point, Mass Historical Commission may look at it. They don't look at it at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think our next review is going to be the architectural and landscaping peer review. Is that correct?
Well, those are on my list of questions this evening.
Okay.
How we get from here to there.
Who's doing the design review?
It's part of our scope.
It's part of your
Yeah.
scope.
So you'll be doing that.
Great, yeah, we were going to inquire about the status of those reviews. Okay. Do we know when we'll see something like that?
Yeah, I
from
can get
those?
something out. Do you want, when is the next meeting scheduled?
Well, that's probably what we need to figure out is when do you want to meet? Because
Yeah,
you want
next
to make sure you
meeting is
have
August 17th, so
Well,
whether or not...
except I can't be here, so I don't- you haven't heard all
Well, then we
this,
can't
but
do it then.
I discovered this afternoon that I have a conflict on that date, so I had suggested that maybe if we could find a different date, it would be good.
Do you want to,
24th?
do you want to postpone that to 9/21, which would be the September meeting?
That's at the board's pleasure. I was merely going to say that we will make sure that whatever review we provide will be a week ahead of your meeting date so that we can satisfy the...
Does the applicant have an issue with delaying that review till the 21st?
That's a pretty significant delay from where we are today. If there's something else we could do, that'd be appreciated. I'm not sure
Oh, I see. You mean going to September?
Yes.
Is there another...
You have 180 days, so I
Right.
don't think you want to do that. I think what you probably want to do is find a date. I mean, if the board needs to meet on the 17th and I can't be here, I can't be here. I'm just wanted you to know.
No, we can,
I have a conflict.
we can all, Judy, do you know what the schedule of this room is, so we can, do you know when planning board, I think it's planning board and selectmen are the only other two we have to be concerned with,
Yeah,
correct?
planning board's not an issue.
What's a different day you can meet, and also the applicant, is there any,
We don't have any restrictions.
Just take a look at the,
10th of August is the only conflict. Conservation Commission will be here August 10th.
okay?
okay.
I mean, we have this, the 16th, I mean, do you want, is it?
I could be here on the 18th, Thursday
18th.
night.
Does the 18th work for the applicant?
Just telling you what my schedule is.
Does the applicant, does that work for you as well, Andrew?
15, 16, 17th, I'm tied up. 18th, I could be here. Just
Is that-
speaking for
does that
myself.
work- Does that work for you?
That should be fine.
Work for? the
August 18th?
Does that work for the town?
Is that all right, Ray?
Good.
Look at the calendar.
18th work for
Actually
you?
better than the 17th.
applicant?
Yeah, I know, 'cause you-
Thursday for the applicant?
Thursday?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
So we have the 18th. That was easy.
Yeah.
See, we're accommodating.
Thank you.
What time is that?
So we'll do the architectural,
Looks like we're good.
Yep.
Judy,
We'll have it
the
to you next-
architectural landscape
okay, 2
review
weeks.
at that point.
Thank you.
so
We have a time, Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Go ahead.
Time.
Do we have a time for
Oh.
this?
We have a,
What else is on our agenda?
you have Geneva Ave, but we can,
do you want to do same time, 7:30?
yes, yeah, let's do 7:30 on the 18th.
Great.
Yeah. Does that work for you, Judy? Is that early? Is that?
It's
okay.
fine, yeah.
7:30 on the 18th.
Somebody needs to make a motion to continue it.
Before we...
Are we ready to
Well, there's a
continue?
motion.
Are we
Yeah.
Before we do
ready
that?
Not done
to-
yet.
Thank you.
Making
Oh,
sure.
Go ahead, Steve.
Is a site visit something that this board will want to do before?
Oh, I think you
Before all said and
definitely,
done?
I think you definitely want to do that. I'm sorry, I actually thought that had happened, so I should have
No, it
asked.
hasn't yet, but yeah.
Yeah, you definitely want to do that.
We do.
So I'm not sure at what point you think that would be beneficial. I almost feel as though the sooner the better, because then as things are discussed, you know, you can say you've been there, you've seen it, as
Yeah.
opposed to going there after the fact.
Yeah.
So if that's something we want to schedule.
Okay.
What can you have staked on the property to help the board kind of orient?
If we're meeting tomorrow, probably nothing, but it really depends on when we're meeting. And
Yeah.
we will obviously get as much staked as possible and what you think you need staked.
What do you think you need for time to prepare the site for, so that, again, so the board
A
can
week.
visualize where units are going, where the streets, where the road is going to be, you know, the back side, the front side?
Yeah, I would say about a week. We could get roadway center line staked, you know, approximate detention basins, things of that nature. Fortunately, the site is not an undeveloped site, so there are a lot of reference markers on the site now that can be utilize from the plans. But I think some supplemental staking would certainly be beneficial. I think center line of road would probably be the most beneficial.
That's typically what
Yeah.
I've seen in
Yeah.
other projects.
Walking in the
center line.
woods is always a little more of a challenge to get your bearings, but on a site like this, I think you'll find it fairly straightforward, but
Mr. Chairman, if we were to do it, let's say, next Wednesday in the morning, so as not to conflict with other,
The only concern I have is one is the chairman, Mike Kaliza, will be back, so we probably should find out his schedule. I know we also have to post this.
Well, you do, but I think that also the people who are here may want to know when you're going to do it,
Right.
so
I think,
typically the board announces that during the public hearing so that interested parties know that when it will occur.
what's our time they have to post?
Well, it's 48 hours, but the issue is telling people while the
letting
hearing
the
is
people, the
open.
audience know that they can attend.
Yeah,
What?
yeah, because they can.
It's our preference to have butters on private property.
Well, it is typical for abutters to be able to observe because it's a posted meeting. So typically, abutters are,
I don't think we can
Present.
deny them.
yeah, it would be difficult.
We could deny them private property access.
Yeah,
think that's
I
the
mean-
conflict.
You-
It's a posted meeting because there's a quorum of the members of the board.
Right,
Is there?
Not a
con-
public hearing.
That's
it's a
correct.
public meeting.
that's correct. But people get, what's the point of the open meeting law? It's so people can observe government in action.
That's right.
That's the rub. So I think if there's going to be an issue, you might want to refer this to town council, but, and get town council to weigh in on whether, I mean, you need to know before
Yes.
you go out there, because you may have interested people who want to observe.
Could we,
Well, let them for a minute.
I was going to suggest,
Hmm?
could we identify two possible times?
Yes,
Yeah.
we're gonna do that once we,
Then
once we solve
Then we
this.
would post one of those.
I think that's fine. If you just tell people, like,
Right.
it might be one of these or the other, and check the town website, or however you do it here. Every town's different.
The
but-
applicant's okay.
The applicant's okay with that?
Acknowledge it.
Okay, all right. Do we,
Certainly, Chris,
yes,
the morning, if we have to push it out, the morning of our meeting on the 17th or 18th of August is always an alternative,
right,
okay, when it's fresh in everybody's mind.
right. So let's look at the calendar and see if we can come up with a couple of,
I'd like to see one of the dates be as possibly Saturday morning type of day.
Saturday morning?
As one of the two. Make one a weekday as.
That's a good idea.
And have one
does
of
the
the
Saturday work for the applicant as well?
Yeah, just so we have that option, then we could decide and post what works best.
We're trying to do it soon. So today we're at the 20th. So do we want to look at the 30th of July? And as a backup date, the 18th of August?
You mean before the hearing?
Correct.
Yeah, some boards do that.
Would that work for everybody? So the 30th would be a Saturday morning, and then if not, the 18th of August,
That morning.
that morning. And we can pick a time in a moment for that.
So just so people understand, even if you're allowed to accompany the board, you can't
Right.
talk to them,
Right.
because it's not a public hearing. You can observe if.
You
assuming
can
all
watch
works out.
and listen.
That's right, but you can't address the board.
Right.
You address the board in the hearing.
Any particular time would you like on Saturday? Do you want to pick a time?
Before it gets too hot. 9 o'clock
Hmm?
sounds good. Before it gets too hot.
Sure.
9 o'clock sounds fine.
9 o'clock?
Yeah.
9 o'clock?
That's fair, yep.
Okay, so we're looking at 9 o'clock on Saturday, the 30th of July. And if not, 9 o'clock on August 18th. But that again would be obviously if it's pouring on 30th of July, or if there's some conflict with the chairman, and he may decide he doesn't have to attend that. That works?
Is the 18th,
The 18th is the
Thursday.
Thursday morning of
Thursday.
August, of the hearing.
would it make sense to, rather than meet twice, to convene at the site and then come directly to the meeting?
Boards often do that, it's up to you, but.
It's too, I think that's too difficult. You're saying to meet prior to coming here?
Yes, that's
I think it's very difficult. Joe travels. I mean, I think you got some logistics, and to have you standing there and people standing there waiting for people to come, I think would be a problem. Okay, but we are going to try for Saturday the 30th is going to be our first option, and I will have the secretary contact you on Monday when she returns from vacation, just to verify that so we can post it properly. Okay.
So the alternative of the 18th, what time?
9 o'clock as well. Any other concerns, Judy? Andrew?
Not at this
Ray?
time.
I'm good, thank you.
Steve or, hold on, Kathy. Any other concerns, Stephen?
Thank you.
Kathy, do you have a concern?
No concern, just to
Comment.
express my thanks, thanks, to be allowed to go as an abutter. It'll help me out a great deal just to have more comfort in where things are placed, so thank you for that.
Did you make sure Amy was,
So is it our understanding that the applicants, you're going to, the two traffic consultants are going to perhaps communicate around the scope and so forth? Okay.
Hopefully we will have something to submit to this board.
Super. Great.
Okay. Could I have a motion to continue the public hearing?
Okay. Make a motion that we continue the public hearing for 84 Cleveland Street to August 18th at 7:30
To discuss
to discuss the 40B application.
I second that motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you for your time.
So how much longer are you going to be with this project? Do you know who's going to take over for you?
We just have this application to enter in, is that right?
I think I've met him. Yeah.
Now we can, we actually don't have to
Beta,
preview it.
you guys are
No,
awesome.
we don't
That's
have to
like-
do it as a-
I wish you were in town. No, you
Review right now.
always are
We can.
very thorough. Ken is fabulous.
Does a nice job.
Yeah, he's
Area of business here.
Preview this application, we can. We don't really have to.
well, it's hard with.
Or if they want to look at it, I don't think we have to.
Not sure what you said.
Oh, I think so. Okay.
Serious time.
Not that I'm in a rush to get out of here.
This whole thing about what's the applicant's responsibility.
So do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting? Just did adjourn the meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Beat you to it.
There a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good job, guys.
Thank you very much.
you guys
This concludes the zoning board meeting for the